Welcome to the Mr. R Show, presented by the MRR Institute. This podcast is designed specifically for tax professionals looking to scale and modernize their practice by maximizing revenue through resources. Join us as we explore expert strategies, innovative tools, and actionable advice to help you navigate the evolving landscape of the tax industry. Whether you're aiming to grow your business or enhance your client experience, you're in the right place. Now, let's get to the show and transform your practice together.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Mr. R Show, brought to you by the MRR Institute. As always, we work pretty hard here, I should say really hard, to get some great content in front of you. Of course, you do get that free CPE for joining us here on this one, so be sure to follow the link in the show notes wherever you're listening to this. And you won't really want to hear too much from me on this one, so I'm going to let our two guests and, of course, my co-host, Chris Pacchiro, run with this one. And one more thing. Right. Congratulations again for surviving the new year. Here you are back in 2025. You got through the first month. Now we're in the second one. Sure, your year is off to a great one. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic over to my co-host, Chris Pacchiro, and he will introduce the topic as well as the guests on this show today.
Well, thanks, John, and welcome back, everyone, to the Mr. R Show. We're excited to have you. If you're driving in your vehicle or sitting at your desk, walking, jogging, whatever you're doing, welcome back. We are going to talk about, because one of the things that I'm passionate about is making sure that we're helping our clients with as many things as we can to add as much value to our clients' lives as we can, and also to be able to monetize all of the training and education, relationships, and all the things we bring to the table for our clients. So we have seen a trend over the last decade, especially, of CPAs, enrolled agents, and some other tax professionals entering the world of financial advising and having what we call a dual practice. So we have two amazing guests this episode. I'm just going to say for myself, I've been a licensed financial advisor for about 19 years. It's been incorporated into our tax practice, and I've done a lot of different things with it. But I am so excited to have the guests we have today, to have two fresh perspectives, because guess what? Y'all are sick of hearing about my trials and tribulations. So welcome to amazing CPAs I have a lot of communication with. I feel like they've become friends. Scott Nelson and Trey Junkins. Welcome, guys. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Doing good, Chris. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Well, we're going to start with Scott. Scott's located in Southwest Florida. Scott, can you tell us a little bit about your practice, a little bit about yourself, and how you chose to, first of all, get into accounting and then get into financial advising?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. So, funny thing is, getting into accounting, after serving in the Air Force and then getting my degree in finance, I thought for sure what I wanted to do was become a financial advisor. However, while I was finishing that degree, I worked for a few retail banks who completely discouraged me from staying on in that direction. I wanted to be a trusted advisor, and I felt like the big banks were taking everything that the word trust means and sweeping it out the door. Kind of felt more like a used salesman. If you notice, you go into any bank and you can't make it even up to the teller window before three people have come up and tried to offer you a financial review or a credit card or something else. So then after I finished my studies and I actually finished my master's degree, I really wasn't certain which direction I wanted to go. Do I want to go financial advisor or accountant? And I applied in both fields. But as you know, in both fields, you usually need experience to get hired, but you need to get hired to get experience. So it was kind of that tricky, where am I going to go? It was hard to find a position. And then I finally got an offer from two different firms in the same week. And one was to become a financial advisor and the other was to become an accountant. And I had the weekend to choose. I thought back about those banking days and I became an accountant.
No, I would argue they made the right choice, because it's much easier to go from accounting and add financial advising than a financial advisor trying to learn how to be a CPA or tax professional. So
Exactly. So I felt like it was the best path that I could have gone down, because after becoming an accountant, getting my CPA credential, going out on my own, starting my own firm, I had this, the resources of clients, of the cash flow coming in to be able to cover my, my living expenses, and not feeling like that advisor that has to call every single telephone number in the phone book, so to speak, and accept every client that even considers taking your service. I can be very selective of who I service, because I don't need the clients, I want them. And if I don't want them, I'm not taking them, which really puts, I think, us as CPAs, or even other, EAs, or somebody who is already a trusted advisor to their clients. You just added another layer of service that you can provide from somebody that they already trust. So it was a really simple segue, that, in that respect. So to say a little bit about my practice, I'm here in Southwest Florida. My office is in Bonita Springs, which is dead center between Fort Myers and Naples. I'm probably, I'd say, 50 to 60% accounting services, and 40% climbing towards that 50% in investment advisory services. The way that my advisory side works, I keep the two separate, in the sense of I've got two different business cards, so that I'm not crossing any regulatory lines when I am explaining what I'm offering or sending emails out to clients. I keep it separate. I partner with a wealth management company that I rented space from as a CPA firm for several years before I started working with them, so that I knew that I could trust them, because anybody who's in this realm knows that every financial advisor out there wants to partner with a CPA, so that you'll refer clients back to them, and you won't refer their clients to somebody else for financial advisory services. So you have to be careful of who you refer to, because it's a reflection a lot of times on yourself. You refer something over, and then it turns out sour, and it backfires on you as a person, even though you didn't do any of the work, so to speak.
Right. No, you nailed it. Right. Because you've got as a CPA or as a tax professional, you have, I, I can't remember where I heard this, but other than you're basically, someone's number two advisor in their life, as far as trust, next to their primary care physician. They trust us, most of our clients, implicitly, and with take responsibility for us. We take that very seriously. So you said you're choosing, you could be particular with the financial advising clients. And here's the great thing. You already done their tax work. You've already worked with them. You already kind of know their income. You might not know their entire balance sheet, but as an experienced tax professional, you can get your head around that. And one of the kind of the cool things about having financial advising is, and I'm going to ask Trey what he thinks about this is that I should really keep track of this one year, but I swear about 75% of my interactions with clients could lead to more revenue. When the clients come to you with a question, like, I'm thinking about selling this property. I have I think about selling this property. I want to do a 1031 exchange. I bought it. I have a friend right now. I bought it. I'm not going to get into too many deals. I bought it, X amount of years ago. It's tripled in price. I'm sick of being a landlord. Hey, you could still do a 1031 exchange into a syndication, and just, I want mailbox money. I don't want to be a landlord anymore, but I really don't need the cash. And I just want mailbox money, and bam. So now on the tax side of it, hey, if you do the 1031, if you don't do the 1031, you sell, here's your tax burden. But if you do the 1031, this is what this is where you're at. And if you need help, you know, finding that replacement property, let me turn you on to some other resources. So that's always feels good. And then Trey, obviously the most important thing we have in common, other than being CPAs, is we're both diehard Detroit Tiger fans. That goes without saying, as number one.
That's right. That's right. It does. This is a good time to be gloating in that. We just need a couple more signings here before the spring ball starts.
We do. We do need a little more depth. We can't travel baseball our way through the playoffs anymore with one stud pitcher and a bunch of guys coming out of the outfield. But anyway, yeah, Trey Junkins, tell us about your practice and how you got started picking accounting and why you wanted to get into financial advising.
No, absolutely. I wish I had a little bit more of an exciting story of why accounting, but it just got oddly struck me as an interesting and something I excelled at pretty early on. Even when I was in high school, my high school that I went to offered an accounting class for, upperclassmen that they could take. And I got the opportunity to take that earlier than most and did great. And did some dual enrollment at the local community college, took a couple college classes while I was in high school. And it's just one of those things that clicked. And, I didn't really have anything else pulling at my mind and at my heartstrings from a career perspective. So I decided to pursue that. And so went to school locally at Western Michigan University. My practice and my home for my life has been Southwest Michigan, so not nearly as sunny and warm as some of us on today's show. When I turned on my car this morning, it's like -6, so that's a step in the right direction. Yeah. But all kidding aside, I started my firm when I was still in college, and it was a side hustle. I graduated with my accounting degree. I started working actually at a local financial institution in their accounting department, kind of moved up the ranks there, at a pretty decent pace. And then I actually got a job, so a large corporation, a Fortune 150 company here in Southwest Michigan, and worked in their corporate controllers group for about 6.5 years. And I had my firm on the side that whole time, but I was not actively trying to grow it. It was natural, a few tax returns every year, mostly friends and family to start. It would grow a little bit every year. And, every once in a while, get a new bookkeeping client, something along those lines. But it was, it was play money. It was not meant to pay the bills per se. But then over my years of working in the corporate world, I slowly just, had that epiphany, working with small businesses, with the mom and pops, with individuals talking about taxes and tax planning, that tend to fill my bucket, a lot more than working in the corporate world. And I say that saying I had great experiences in the corporate world. I don't speak ill about that. They treated me great, and that's an awesome career path. But it just wasn't. I found out it wasn't what's gonna uh, fill me up for the rest of my life. So
Right.
with that being said, I took a few years and really poured into my business, JW Accounting, and just a couple years ago, I ripped the Band-Aid off of the full-time job and said, "Listen, I'm either gonna give this a try and I'm gonna sink or swim." And so, luckily so far, it's been swimming, and we're doing really well. So
And as far as financial advising, I know that we're going to talk about different tactics, but just at a 30,000-foot view, you've merged with a financial advisory practice. Is that, in which I've done? I went through the same experience, and I know we talked about that on a little bit too. But yeah, can you tell us about that decision and how? Of course, you're not going to say it's going all terribly, but just kind of what went into the decision and why you wanted to move forward with that.
yeah, absolutely. So up until this month, JW Accounting has offered what I would call stereotypical accounting and tax services, right? Tax preparation, tax planning, bookkeeping, payroll, all that type of stuff. But we did have a very key strategic business partner to refer clients back and forth with for financial advising, wealth management, things of that nature. And I would say over the past, 12 to 18 months, we just started to have conversations of going, is there sound, good business reasons why we should not, formalize a partnership and really start working together on a closer basis? And just after having those conversations, we decided, yeah, it probably does make a lot of sense. And and to be truthful, obviously when you do something like this, there's going to be a lot of referrals and sharing of clients on both sides, in both directions, right? And that's the goal, because we're trying to all grow together, and so we're always going to be referring back and forth. But from a strategic standpoint, we're really in the early parts of this merger, really focusing on the wealth management clients, introducing tax planning to their pre-existing client base, and going, from a conversational piece, it's been more, hey, if the financial advisors and the wealth management advisors are going to do our job to the best of our ability, taxes is probably going to be the biggest expense that's going to eat away at your wealth creation and your wealth management. So we need to make sure that we are looking at this, planning for this, talking about taxes. This can't be on the back burner anymore. And so we're bringing in and we're merging with CPAs to help us proactively do that for you. And so that's been the early on, I would say, focus from a conversational piece is more so going to their side. But like I said, there's definitely going to be plenty of, clients that we've been servicing before that we can introduce to the wealth management side of the business too.
When I feel like a lot of tax professionals are the de facto financial advisor for their clients, even though they're not getting paid to do it.
Sure.
They get asked a lot of questions. And you both share office space with a financial advisor. We used to share office space, and I almost feel like it's like that girl next door that you used to like, play tag with, and then all of a sudden you come home from college and she's like not the girl next door anymore. You're like, wait a second here, maybe I should be dating this girl. I don't know. And because it's like, gosh, we have so many things in common, and yet we could really be a good synergy. And I know, especially when I was first starting out, I mean, before Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, when you itemize your deductions, you'd always see on those miscellaneous itemized deductions, tax prep fee and financial advisory fee. And it hit me when I was in my late 20s. Okay, yeah, make your joke, John, many years ago, 2 decades ago now, a little over 2 decades ago now. And gosh, my charge was $400 and they paid $5,000, to a financial advisor. And who are they coming? And the financial advisors emailing me and calling me for half the crap that they're supposed to be doing, like Roth conversion numbers and this, and then help with capital gain harvesting or capital loss. Why don't I embrace my role and say, okay, let me help clients with that, and that's one of the reasons that led me to kind of walk into it. Just so, and you mentioned something, Trey, introducing the tax planning. I want to get your feedback because I have my number. I have my number written down. I'll reveal in a minute. But for clients that have done any type of tax planning, and I'll start with Scott. Back to Scott. What percent of the time do you find opportunities to help them with financial advisory? Or when I say financial advisory, I'm going to include life insurance planning and maybe, in those sort of things. But what percent of the time when you sit down with someone or talk to someone about a tax plan, are you feeling like there's other opportunities to help them out and quite frankly, monetize that?
I mean, honestly, probably 100% of the time. There's always something. I mean, I guess you can't say 100% because there's always that one time where you're sitting down and that person has done everything perfect their whole life and they have everything. And that's like the unicorn, you know? But every once in a while you run into that person. They've just done everything by the book their whole life. And that's 99.9% not everybody else. So there's always some sort of opportunity. Now, are they willing to act on those opportunities? Now that percentage drops down quite substantially, where then I'd say maybe it's a, you know, 70% or greater chance that you sit down to do a financial plan or a tax plan with somebody, and there is an opportunity to do something more in the advisory or financial advisory side of it.
It could even be like a tax plan, and it benefits them to be an S corp, and now we can help process payroll, either do it hands on or use a third party referral source, and implement a solo K. There's just so many things you could potentially do. How about you, Trey? I know you guys are stepping into this quite a bit too.
Sure, sure. I mean, from a percentage standpoint, yeah, it's got to be high. We're playing the game, so I feel like I don't want to cop out and not put a number out here for this conversation. I'm gonna say I'll go 80%. Maybe I'm a little lower than what you guys are saying. I do think, though, all kidding aside, it's certainly more conversations than not, right? That there is something that can either be executed, planned, discussed, talked about, benefits. There's no doubt about it. And what Scott just referenced to, when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, is you can lay out the plan. Are they going to execute it? Does the client want to execute it? I will tell you, for me, it's not usually it's not a do the clients want to execute it. It's can they execute it? Because cash is king, for a vast majority of either tax opportunities or plans or even for investments, right? I mean, cash is going to be needed in some capacity, a majority of the time. So that's usually where, the conversation, where the rubber meets the road is, hey, we can do
Right.
this. We can do a solo. We can do just the list goes on and on as far as opportunities are concerned, but we're going to have some cash to do that. And that's one of the many, many areas where having a more hands-on relationship with the advisor, with the financial advisor helps, right? We're going to need cash to do this. Where's all their cash currently at? What is there anything we can do to move that around? Do we need to liquidate? But what kind of tax results is that going to be? Well, then they throw that back in my department, to talk about that. So there's a lot of back and forth.
I'd actually like to piggyback on to Trey there, what Trey just said, as far as sort of those different opportunities and what you can do with it, going back and forth with the advisor side or the tax planning side, where I'm gonna steal a line from Chris here, and I've actually used it quite often lately, is that we're more of a client's board of directors, and that, you know, the investment advisor, the estate planning attorney, the CPA or EA or whoever's doing, the tax planning or tax preparation, you know, we, we shouldn't be making all of the decisions for a client. Instead, to quote Chris there, we are their members of the board of directors. We're providing them sound advice, and then it's up to them to take that advice or not. And if we pretend to be a master of all trades, we become moderate at any of them, and we all need to have those specializations that we can, really dive into to provide our clients that real sound advice.
Right. Right. So I forgot to mention this. 80% was my number I wrote down for opportunity when you do a tax plan that people are going to implement. That's just my own thought on it. And you're right. I mean, the clients want your help too. Like ultimately, from a client perspective, right? If you're charging 1%, let's say you're charging 1% management fee. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. If you've got a CPA involved and a financial advisor involved, you're getting two people on your team. You're getting the tax part of it as just part of that, or if you're running a fee-based practice. So yeah, there's a lot of synergies there. It's like peanut butter and jelly, really. So let's talk about, ki- you know, s- I'll ask Scott first, or actually I'll ask Trey first, since you kind of recently did it. What are the first steps as far as being able to offer this service? There is some licensing requirement. This is a very highly regulated industry. Can be a little annoying at times, but
Sure.
we know that those safeguards are out there to protect us. What's the first step, and what did you go through to be able to offer this and to be able to be compensated for your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to be just preface all of my comments with, obviously, I was not on the wealth management side of things before all of this started. So I don't want to get too wild and start speaking terms that may or may not be wildly accurate here, but I will at least speak to it from my side of the fence. There was a lot of coordination that needed to take place. The firm that we merged with, I can tell they were affiliate of obviously a very, very large, national wealth management firm. And so there was a lot of, our staff and our team had to go through the entire onboarding process, through that firm, go through all the background checks, go through all the registrations, everything, that any other employee that would have been hired by their firm, even before the merger, if they were just hiring a new hire to bring on their team, my whole team had to go through that process to make sure that everything was okay. And then, from a technical standpoint, there are certainly limitations on who can have access to what type of documentation and access to what systems, right? And who can see what and all of that. So we've had to walk that tightrope. The way that we're still functioning, and again, this is very, very new and fresh for us. So I'm not saying this is how it's going to be forever, but the way that both companies and both stabs of both companies are working right now at this, brand new, with this merger, is we're still working in silos, from the standpoint of no one on my team is going to log into the wealth management platform and look at what type of investments, someone has or anything like that. No one on the wealth management team is logging in to, we use Canopy. No one's logging into our Canopy account and looking at so-and-so's tax returns for the last 3 or 4 years, right? It's still siloed and segmented from that regard. So yeah, that's the long-winded answer, just to say, it's still very much so separate from a who can see what, who can do what, who, all that type of stuff. But from a client-facing perspective, we are doing a very good job, I think, and we're being very purposeful on coming together. We're presenting together. We're talking together. Everything looks, together when we're meeting with people and we're client-facing.
Now, Scott, no, thank you. Scott, on your end, are you, what licenses or do you have a life insurance license or health insurance license or also, or are you?
I'm currently doing the insurance license with Florida because I can't speak, on annuities or life insurance or anything like that until I am, and not because I actually don't have a care to ever provide either of those products, and mostly just because of the tightrope that we have to walk as CPAs doing the right ethical thing. So I try to stay away from anything that has a commission because, that not just in fact, but in appearance. So, if you offer two different annuities or two different life insurances and one pays a higher commission, but but maybe that one is the better, but slightly, what's going to happen if something happens to that person and then their heirs are looking at what you did? And I'm not saying that you can't, because you obviously can sell these products. You just have to, really walk that slippery rope, and then that rope becomes even thinner as a CPA. Yeah, so for that license, I'm the only reason I'm even getting that one is just so that I can legally speak to it without crossing that line and having to bring in one of the, annuity experts or, whatever else. But as far as licensing goes, I went out and I got my Series 65 so that I could become investment advisory representative. I'm enrolled with, the PFP section of the AICPA to be able to get all those resources. And I started going through the PFS certification program to have that as well. So then as far as licensing, that's where I am. I've got, the CPA license and I got the Series 65.
I was thinking about that. So we're going to talk about compensation in a minute, but we're dovetailing of that is thinking about your relationship in the financial advising process, right? Because I look at it like this is just my own way of looking at it. I always feel like there's kind of like four tiers, right? There's the first tier is, and I'm a tax professional, but I'm also a financial advisor, and I'm the one filling out the paperwork. I'm the one finding third party property. I'm a one man or one woman band. Any commission I get, I keep. I might have staff. I might have to pay a broker dealer, but I'm not splitting it up with anyone. Then you might have the second situation where there is a revenue sharing or there's a partnership of some type. I'm the go to person. I'm their financial advisor, but I'm also really working with a whole other team of people, if that makes sense. That's second. And then the third would be I'm on the team, but I'm not your go-to guy or girl. I'm I'm getting compensated because I'm a financial advisor. I'm part of the team, but if someone calls in with a beneficiary change, I'm not their person. I'm not, you know. And then the fourth would be I'm licensed maybe with a broker dealer and I have a solicitor's agreement with somebody and I'm getting paid a commission or some type of revenue share, but I'm not involved in anything all day to day. And those are out there too, the solicitor agreements. So going from basically, a referral, referral source, no day to day to I'm doing everything. I know you guys are kind of that spectrum of because if you're listening to this, you're either already doing financial advisory or you're thinking about bringing it into your practice. And there's no wrong or right answer. It's just what you're comfortable with.
Right. Yeah. So I'd say I'm probably, and mostly because I didn't fully understand what you were saying for what number two tier was, but I think I was somewhere between two and three, like kind of a mix in there. Because if for investment advisory services, if the if a client calls in and they're my client for investment advisory, they're going to call the wealth management company's telephone number, and the receptionist is going to pick up. And depending on what it is that they're asking for, they're either going to get me because they'll say, "Oh, I need to speak with Scott because I'm thinking about this investment and I want to get his opinion," or, whatever it might be. Or if they say, "I'm calling in and I changed my bank account and I need to make sure that my retirement account is connected to the new account," they're going to push it over to somebody on our team that's what they do, and they work 100% on, for the wealth management company. So I'm kind of, I'm kind of swimming in both sides there.
Yeah, that I didn't explain it properly. I guess my way would thought my thought might be the most hands-on approach is you are conducting every meeting, you're in every meeting, and you're implementing things very hands-on. The second one would be you're in the meetings, but you're not necessarily executing the plans. The third one, which that's kind of where I'm at, is I might be in that discovery or that initial meeting. I'm brought in on any tax-related matters, but I'm not in the quarterly or annual reviews. I'm not in any of those meetings unless there's unless I need to be, but by default, I'm not. And then the fourth one is I'm not in any meetings. I basically make an introduction. I get a solicitor's fee. Again, all this has to be legal and ethical. That's why you have compliance departments. That's why there's a lot of red tape we have to go through and not in a bad way. So I'm kind of in that third example where I would make the introduction. I might be in the discovery meeting, but I'm not in the quarterly or annual review meetings unless it's specifically regarding taxes. And I think, Trey, it sounds like you might be in that realmish. I'm not sure your involvement on that. So
Yeah, yeah, and the way you're describing it, I would say so. And again, this is all new to us, but the way that things are kind of working out right now is, let's just pretend for the sake of conversation that a new prospect or a new client walks through the doors of our wealth management firm, right? Hey, we'd like to sit down with an advisor. We were referred by so and so. That's great, that's wonderful, and we have support and admin staff. Set that all up. The financial advisor may sit down that very first meeting, for an introductory, how'd you get to know us? Here's a little bit about our firm. Here's about, our investment philosophy, all those type of things. But during that meeting, they are definitely having a discussion now saying, hey, just so you know, we have, CPAs on staff who help specifically with tax planning, tax preparation, all the way down the list of everything, all the services we offer. Depending on how the client receives that, I am likely brought in that very next meeting at that
right,
point, unless they say, "Oh no, my brother's done my taxes for 30 years. We're not changing it." Obviously
right,
there's circumstances, but if they show interest as, "Oh, that would be really great. I'd love to at least meet with somebody, put a face to the name, talk to them about what that might look like." I'm usually brought in during that second conversation. On an ongoing basis, though, let's say that prospect then says, "Yeah, it sounds great. We'd love to use, your firm, and we'd like to use all of your services, wealth management and tax combined. We want to use everything. That's awesome." Right now, I at least have one meeting a year where it's myself, the wealth management advisor, and the client that's sitting down together. Whatever we execute or wherever we decide to execute, I may or may not be the person that does it, or I probably oversee it, make sure it does get done. But I am gonna sit down, at least probably once to twice a year with everyone, just to and for us, it's, do we have to structure it that way? Maybe, maybe not, but it's a relationship, especially for new clients that we're trying to build relationships with. It's just something that we've
right.
prioritized making happen.
And you're gonna adjust as things go on. I'm thinking, and you might have a tiered offering. And that's going to go into my next question as far as if the people listening to this, again, they might be financial advisors already. A lot of people listening probably are just interested in bringing financial advisory into their practice, compensation wise. So just like in the tax world, there's a variety of things. There are certain things that you're going to earn a commission on. There are, but then there's certain things that are going to be an AUM or assets under management. That's kind of like a subscription. That's a quarterly fee, or some people charge quarterly, monthly for whatever assets are being managed. And then there's some fee only advisors where basically they charge a flat fee, and typically, that could be quarterly or what have you, to build the plan, maintain a plan, and then if you implement things, there could be additional revenue sources. So, just kind of talking through that. Do you have any thoughts on what you're Scott, for your client base, and what you're seeing out there is becoming more popular, and there's certain things that they're just commissionable products. That's just the way we're paid if you're a financial advisor on it. And as long as we disclose these things, there's nothing. Do you expect people to sell your house for free? No, this isn't. Yeah, they're going to be compensated.
Right.
So, what do you think in your practice that people prefer? I imagine not to paint a loose, not to make assumptions, but I would imagine that in Southwest Florida you have a very mature aged population. Probably people more in that maintenance mode, maybe the distribution mode of their season of their life.
Yeah.
but I don't know.
So the majority of the clients that I'm seeing, and I guess I have to rewind from our last question. Now that I understand it a little better, I'm more of the one too because I'm sitting I'm doing the quarterly service meetings. I go out and I speak at seminars, and then clients or potential prospects come back and they book a prospect meeting. I sit with them. I did that today. I also then I'll put together a proposal, but I don't put the proposal together all by myself. That's what the wealth management team, they, are picking the strategy. And then I'm going over it with the client. I'm looking at it, behind the scenes as well, but I'm not the one that's sitting in front of the computer looking at all the tickers and the candlesticks of, all right, buy, sell time. But then I'm meeting with them for quarterly service meetings when it comes to the advisory. And a big part of it, of course, segues into this next question is what's the fee? Because, the like you said, down here in Southwest Florida, a large number of the clients, I'd say almost all of my clients are retired as far as on the wealth management side. However, being in Southwest Florida and it's an affluent marketplace, everybody from up north that has money moves down here at least part of the year, and then they head back. We don't have changing seasons. As far as like the fall leaves, we have the changing colors of license plates that show up in the winter. But so with that, it's not just service, though. What we find quite a bit is you have a lot of people that retire early, which opens up a lot of planning opportunities because if, they retired in their early 60s or late 50s and they're not taking Social Security yet, they don't have to take those required minimum distributions yet. Looking at it from a tax perspective, we're going, okay, look, you've got 90% of everything in a traditional IRA or a 401k, and you've got 5% in this brokerage account, another 5% in your Roth, or, whatever the blend is. And they're looking at how do I get more into that Roth? And from a financial planning or a tax planning standpoint, that's where I'm coming in and going, okay, can you survive off of savings for a year or two? Because on your tax return, you look like you're in poverty, and then you can then convert quite a bit into that Roth without jumping past the 12 or 20% tax bracket all the way up until you're forced to take Social Security, and then the provisional income comes in, so it pushes it up a little bit. And then the RMDs come in, and then it becomes very difficult to do those conversions without doing it at very high tax rates. So the sweet spot is when, and that's where my proposal meeting that was this morning came in, as they were in their 60s, and that's exactly what we were looking at. And that's where if somebody's listening to this podcast and they're thinking about getting into this area, it's really where if you have that tax experience, you can really excel and lend your expertise to the area because you think in a way that, look, there are CFPs out there in this office. We have CFPs and they know about tax, and they're tax minded. But the majority of investment advisors are not CFPs and they're not tax minded. They might be good at investing, but they're not thinking about what the tax implication may or may not be, or what tax plan they blew up by restructuring the investment portfolio in November or December and not relaying that information over to the accountant so that they make sure that the proper estimates are paid. But then to answer your driving question there, though, is we're assets under management. It's a percentage. That's how we're paying. No commissions unless it's those insurance products, and the percentage is kind of tiered like tax brackets. Because you can't charge it. I joke about this all the time. If I could get somebody with $25 million to let me fee base or percentage base them at the same amount as somebody with 1 million, that'd be fantastic. But somebody has $25 million isn't going to be stupid enough to do that. So you've got to, it's got to be a percentage, incremental steps. And on the other side of it, you're doing a lot of work for somebody that if they have 100 or 150,000, that percentage has got to be higher, because the amount of work that you're putting into somebody with $150,000 isn't going to be all that different than somebody who has $1 million.
Well, it's actually tougher. A lot of times people say, "Well, I have minimums to work with people," and I'm one of these people. Like, I would love to help everyone, but it does kind of protect yourself, because if someone has $100,000 and they lose 1,000, that's more significant than someone with $2 million that loses 50 grand.
Right.
It's just that's a big, that then it gets, and then they get a little jumpy too. So for you, it's interesting because in your situation, you've got some very complicated financial plans, but on paper, these early retirees probably have a pretty straightforward tax return. They aren't maybe they got a couple of rentals, but they don't have probably S corps coming out of their yin yang and all this. Where, like, Jay, I want to hear about your avatars too, because we'll have people. When we didn't have a lot of mature age people as clients. We had a lot of people that owned businesses. So for us, we were really heavy on the tax prep side, when didn't have as many assets under management. But if we can maybe implement an employer sponsored retirement plan or something like that, we could maybe get them there. But Trey, what are your typical clients looking like now?
Sure, sure. And I'll say that, out of all the things during this whole merger process that we've gone through, this is by far the topic that we have talked the most
Oh,
about.
good.
What do we do with clients who are, I'll use air quotes. No one can see me because this is just, there's no video on this podcast. But, my fingers are up with air quotes of, investment poor but planning rich clients, right? Maybe those are people who are just starting on their investment journey, but they do have 2 businesses, 3 businesses, 4 rental property, you name it, right? How do we make sure we're capturing our value and charging appropriately? So I'll say all that just to say it's a work in progress for us. I will tell you, I don't have a problem sharing with everyone what we're starting with, but I guarantee it will change as we get more clients and just get more situations. The wealth management firm that I merged with, they're AUM, so that it's pretty pretty typical and pretty straightforward. So they have a fee, percentage fee that they have charged historically for their services. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, if we talk to a client that is already using the wealth management services and they want to add on tax services, we're going to go from this fee to this fee. So we do have kind of a set percentage, so to speak, but their AUM number is going to determine the level of services that they're getting. So if their AUM is between, and these are not our exact numbers, but I just want to give a picture here for people. If their AUM, let's say, is under 100,000, we might not even allow them to, we might not even give them the option to bill through their investment account. Like they just might get an invoice straight from us, just like we have always done historically for our clients through our system.
Right.
Let's say they have AUM between 100,000 and 300,000. Well, we can charge you this new percentage rate that we're going to charge all of our joint service clients at, but you're going to get tax prep only. You're not going to get proactive planning.
Right.
Right. And then maybe if they're between, a 300,000 and $1 million, then they're still going to get charged that same percentage, but because their AUM, meets those qualifications, then they would get what we would call tax planning services throughout the year. So we're tiering it like that to start, knowing that there's going to be some modifications to that along the way.
And that's kind of, I mean, I think about the hospitality industry, and look at pretty much every major hotel brand has tiered membership pricing. You could be a gold platinum, and the platinum people get the free room upgrade. They get a 50% bonus. There's just certain benefits based on how many nights you've stayed in their properties. So that's kind of your AOM. And I think coming up with packages and making sure that you're not doing 50 different ways for 50 different clients. And you're right, it's gonna change because clients are gonna, they're gonna be in that asset accumulation stage. I'm just kind of talking about this, like, you've got to look at the client. Some clients are like really P&L heavy, meaning they've got a lot of tax preparation, they've got a lot of stuff going on, but their balance sheet isn't good. But the Scott and your clients might be really great balance sheets, but they don't really have a lot going on their P&L, right? They might just say, "Hey, I've got but their questions might be different, like, should I pay down my mortgage? okay. And but for the client doesn't understand, there's a big difference between, is the money sitting in savings doing nothing? Is it in a brokerage account triggering a capital gain? Is it in a retirement account? Is it in a Roth? So that's where, as CPAs or tax professionals, we have that insight to understand what someone's asking and understanding the tax ramifications of their decisions. Where a lot of the bigger brokerages too, they specifically say we do not give tax advice. Like we are. I want to end on one interesting question, and it just popped in my head because I've been licensed for like 19 years as well, and I get a lot of referrals from other financial advisors. And at the beginning, I was worried that that would hinder me from working with other financial advisors on with their clients if I was just doing the tax planning and strategy and tax prep. Have you experienced any other financial advisors kind of push back on you at all, or any advice for someone that's kind of concerned about that, that's thinking about getting into tax or financial advising?
Yeah, I'll answer that first, Chris. So I was pretty purposeful, and once we decided that this merger was going to take place, I was very purposeful in reaching out to a few of the key financial advisors that I still share mutual clients with from a tax, in the tax service side of the business. Those conversations went fine, right? I mean, there was some natural hesitation with some, but it was totally justified in my opinion. I get that, right? They want to make sure that our relationship is professional, it's strong, that they don't refer someone over to us to do some tax work for them, and then we're slipping them through the proverbial back door to go talk to our, wealth management guys,
Right.
our gals, and we can do better returns and this and that. And, in my heart and in my, that's never how this was going to be to begin with.
Right.
But it was important to be proactive and have those conversations with folks. And I know that the advisors that I merged with on the wealth management side, to be totally transparent, I don't think that they probably had as many strong relationships with CPAs. Certainly they have clients that use other CPAs for prep, but as far as a proactive working, relationship, I don't think there was a lot there. So they weren't as concerned or in tune with that as I was, but it was definitely conversations that were important and critical to have up front.
Yeah, nip that in the bud. Scott, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been very transparent about it with investment advisors and also accountants, because sometimes I'm one side or the other, because I do keep them separate. And whenever I'm working with somebody and I run into this quite a bit because I'm in Southwest Florida. A lot of my clients are here for half of the year and they're in another state for another half of the year. And I tell them right up front when they say, yeah, I want to start working with you as my financial advisor. Do I have to do tax prep and tax planning with you? And I tell them right away, no, you don't. You can keep your current accountant. That's fine. I'll be happy to jump on a phone call with them and put their mind at ease that I wanted to do another tax return like I want to staple the back of my hand. I would prefer that they can, especially, for my clients that are New York or Pennsylvania or Ohio, that, those state returns that I just, don't care to get into too much. I've done them. I've done quite a few of them, but, you know, I I tell the clients and I tell the other professional that I speak with, there's enough work going around and there's enough work out there that if you're really worried about this, maybe, I could help grow your business by referring the ones that I don't want. Because at the end of the day, our job is to be the best trusted advisor for our clients, and we're not going to be that by stepping on the toes of others or poaching, in my opinion. So I have a lot of tax clients that have been my clients for 10 years or so that don't even know that I offer investment advisory services, because I have a relationship with that investment advisor where we've worked on the planning over years and years, and there's no need for me to step on their toes. Um, so yeah, I think anybody who's thinking, "Oh, I don't know how I'm going to navigate this," or they're afraid of, that issue, there's enough work out there that you don't have to worry about that. What I would say that people need to worry about is make sure if you're a CPA especially, you need to contact your state board of the state board of accounting to make sure that you stay in compliance with what you're offering and how you put yourself out there. Because if you're putting on your cards that you're a CPA, but you're working for a company that's not run as a CPA firm, you could find yourself in hot water. So get ahead of it. Just call, ask, what do I need to do? I'm a CPA. I'm going to be doing X, Y, or Z. Like, I found that it's been, because I hold licenses in both Washington and here in Florida as a CPA, and I want to make sure that, and I've got clients all over the United States because my expertise was foreign before I started doing any of this investment advisory stuff. So I had a lot of people that are going all over the place. I want to make sure I didn't cross any of those lines. Do I have to be licensed in other states for investment advisory purposes? Do I have to put a disclosure somewhere that says that, I'm also a CPA? Or am I not allowed to put CPA on there because I'm not a CPA firm in that state and I'm offering advisory? Or, there's a lot of stuff out there. Just make sure you cover yourself for compliance standpoint. It's a lot easier to stay ahead of it than fight it on the other side.
Exactly. The compliance, it's compliance can be a headache, but there's a really good reason we have them. I mean, I could tell you in our teaching, any type of outside business activities have to be reported. Even the transcripts of all of our podcasts have to go through our compliance department before it's published. So, which, again, kind of annoying, but kind of like when you get older and you realize the rules your parents set up for you are probably pretty good. And the way I look at it is, when I have, if I have a financial advisor, I'm very upfront with them. Like, I'm not outwardly facing doing financial advising, but I would say, look, the positive you have with me, because it's not in any of my stuff, not on my personal branding website, but I understand your business. I understand how to work together. And, I'm not going to we have a way that we tag clients in our CRM to make sure that they're not that we're not we really don't have to solicit our clients, right? They're coming to us and we keep track of who their financial advisor is, and we make sure that we, hey, I've heard, should I do a Roth conversion? Yeah, here's some numbers. Do you want me to communicate that with your financial advisor? Do you have someone you want to invite to the meeting? There's ways you could easily figure out what their situation is and make sure you respect that. So, well, I want to personally, I know, thank you guys. You are amazing resources. It's so nice to have you in just our industry and to take time out of your crazy schedules to jump onto the show and to keep John from talking a lot this episode. That was nice.
Hey, you guys know my main goal on these is to be the dumbest guy in the room, literally, and I think I succeeded once again. So this was definitely a great topic, and it's interesting, Chris. I know we've had these discussions way, for years now about, if somebody has a tax practice, how do they go about expanding that, with intention, right? So really scaling it and versus growing it. And I would say what you guys were talking about here is a direct result of probably some plans to truly scale, right? Where you're implementing these services. And I know, Chris, we talked about it again recently in one of the expert tip videos about, profiting through offering payroll services, if that's outsourced or however you decide to do that. I mean, this is obviously a lot more detail oriented necessarily than just, I wouldn't say shipping somebody off, to another vendor, but it was great to hear this. So I appreciate it as well. Thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure to be here. As always, it was a pleasure. I want to say before we're cut off on that, Chris was actually my resource when I was trying to come through this because I posted on a tax forum somewhere. Are there any CPAs that have crossed over to do financial advisory services? I have no idea how to make sure I do the compliance. And Chris reached out to me, and then I met up with him in Nashville, and he kind of laid out what he did, and it helped pave the way for me. So I'm happy to be able to share anything right back.
Well, thank you so much, man. You guys are awesome.
Absolutely. And thank you for having us.
Well, thanks to the three of you for joining us here. And obviously, through MR Institute, we do offer some mastermind courses, which actually I shouldn't say mastermind courses, mastermind sessions with both of these gentlemen are actually a part of. So we're honored to have you in that. But Also, too, we got some other good topics we're going to be talking about here next month. So, everybody who's listening to this, if you have any questions, as always, please, please, please feel free to reach out. Pretty much exactly like Scott did. And then you can, tap Chris as a resource. Trust me, you do not want an answer from me. So, if you get a valid response, it will be from Chris. So, again, thanks for everybody for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for listening in on this. And we will see everybody, or hear everybody, or I should say, you should hear us on the next episode of the Mr. R Show.
You've been listening to the Mr. R Show, presented by the MRR Institute. For more content like this, be sure to check us out on YouTube for weekly expert tips, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast to stay updated on the latest strategies for scaling and modernizing your tax practice. Looking for more? Contact us at mrrinstitute.com for practice resources, coaching opportunities, and a peer-to-peer mastermind group. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer of securities. Offerings can only be made through an offering memorandum, and you should carefully examine the risk factors and other information contained in the memorandum. The content provided is for educational purposes only. We encourage you to seek personalized investment advice from your financial professional. For all tax and legal advice, please consult your CPA or attorney. Investment advisory services are offered through Cabin Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cabin Securities, a registered broker-dealer.